One thing that won't be in place much longer is the replay assistant, potentially. The replay assistant could be morphing into a booth umpire. This is something the Ravens are proposing for the second straight year. And this booth umpire, sky judge is also the term that's used for it. This is exactly the thing, Myles, that I have been banging on the table for years. And it's very simple. And I've gotten the materials that the Ravens have submitted to the league, and I've read over them. The proposed rule is very simple. It just expands the number of officials to 8, and it adds the name booth umpire to field judge, back judge, all the other folks that they currently have on the field. And I've said for years that they need to have someone who is calling the game with the benefit of the TV angles that we see at home to bridge the gap between viewer and participant, because you've got middle-aged folks who have no pads, no helmets, trying to survive among the gladiators, and also while trying not to get trampled by the gladiators, who are wearing body armor and very hard helmets and sharp cleats. They're using their naked eye to see these things that are just whizzing by them. So you put someone in a booth who sees what we see at home and communicates directly to the referee. The referee's still in charge of the crew. But it's no different than the caucuses we see all the time, where officials get together and make sure they're getting the call right. And you've got someone who's got the benefit of seeing exactly what we see to help them get the call right. It is beautiful in its simplicity. The NFL doesn't like to change things. They don't like to do it unless they have to. One of the arguments the Ravens make is simple. It's going to happen eventually. Why not go ahead and do it now?
Well, that, I think, is just the biggest thing. Why not do something that certainly seems like it's inevitable, but also I just don't really understand what the argument is to not do it. Because at this point, especially when we're all sitting at home, and I mean, how many times do we text back and forth on Sundays, Mike, in our group? How did they miss that? And we all see it. We all see the replay instantly. And so why do we have to now, at this point at least, take so much time to maybe do a replay to say, oh my goodness, this is not called on the field properly, but now it's not actually reviewable, so they can't do it. If we have this sky judge or the booth umpire, then we don't have to worry about those kinds of things. They get it right the first time. And Mike, that's why I just say, what is the argument against doing this? I don't really understand what it would be.
And it's unintended consequences. That is the vague, we're going to hide under the bed for fear of unintended consequences. The reality is you should be able, with the application of foresight and creativity, to anticipate all consequences, make them expected, not unintended. You're talking about smart people who can get in a room and brainstorm. Well, what about this? What about this? I could see this happen. I could see that happen. The NFL never does that. They go forward and then they see what happens. And look at what happened with the pass interference replay review procedures from 2 years ago. And the way that was a disaster, Myles, I think that will make them less inclined to take chances. This is one, though, that they need. And one of the reasons they need it, as legalized gambling spreads, these calls become more important. And even if the NFL is never going to get 100% of the calls right, they need to create the impression that they're trying to get 100% of the calls right, and they're doing everything reasonably within their power to do so. The only argument against it is dollars and cents. We're not going to get the bang for the buck. Whatever it costs to hire one extra member of the crew for every crew that we have and put the technology in place and have that booth available and every other expense that goes along with it, what is the incremental gain? Well, I think there will be an incremental gain in the accuracy of calls. Also, you won't be using replay review as often because the booth umpire corrects it before replay has to. And also, it will boost morale. You've got less controversies, and we shouldn't scoff at that. At one point, Jeff Fisher, when he was the Rams coach and on the competition committee, he said, I think tongue-in-cheek, well, we like to give you guys some things to talk about on Monday. These are not the good things to talk about on Monday. Officiating controversies are not ideal. And in a world of legalized gambling, Myles, it is something the NFL should avoid, because if it gets bad enough, the NFL will find itself subject to regulation by some sort of governmental agency. The SEC, Securities and Exchange Commission, did not arrive until 1934. Before that, there was no federal regulation of the stock markets. It took the crash of 29 plus 5 years to create the SEC. So at some point, because you're going to have people wagering money, millions, if not billions of dollars, at some point, there'll be a scandal that sparks Congress to create an agency that'll regulate the NFL. And the best thing that the NFL can do is keep its backyard clean so Congress doesn't come along at some point and say, we're going to clean it up for you. Booth umpire, sky judge, that's part of the process of getting them to where they need to be.
You could have gone with the Consumer Financial Protection Bureau. That would have been a more recent reference, Mike, than when you were alive, but I wasn't, all the way back in the 1930s.
Well, thank you very much. I've been using I actually looked up when the SEC came into existence because I was concerned. I think the NFL needs to be worried about this. And I don't think it's good for anybody if there is a federal agency that has regulatory power over the NFL. The NFL doesn't want that. The NFL doesn't want anyone other than the NFL telling the NFL what to do.
Hi, I'm Mike Tirico, and thanks for watching. Make sure to hit subscribe for the latest news and highlights from NBC Sports.